people. Well, hello.
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 Shout out to Jessie Waters, who has been an honorable guest on this show, or an honorary guest on this show, for every episode that Brian has been here. Every time ZamboniFunk mentions Jessie, talking about, oh, she's got the dopest fashion cues, or she always keeps my ass in line when it comes to poetry or my spellcraft and all that. And now she has decided to grace us on the show. What's up, Jessie?
Feeling good, man. Happy to be here.
I also did not know Zamboni was going to not only just... I thought he might do something like that. I didn't know he was about to just quote to you things I said in the last two shows specifically.
Well, that was literal. Just the most recent, too.
Yeah.
You say something every time.
I do, but that's also... I was like, oh, no, that's not a generic statement. Those are specific references.
I don't have any social media, but that doesn't mean I'm not an influencer, apparently.
It's true. It's true. It's true.
True indeed. Yeah. Bad bitches do it, I believe, is what Azalea Banks said.
So true. Wiser words.
Oh, truly. BBD. So, what's up? I heard that you had a thing. I heard that you were moved and wanted to talk about music and stuff. Or maybe you don't even want to talk about music. Maybe you want to talk about stage presence or something else. I don't know what you want to talk about. What you want to talk about, Jessie?
I want to talk about a lot of things, but this came to a head because I showed Brian, or this came to be because I showed Brian a specific YouTube video.
Oh, story time.
So maybe that's my Trojan horse into what I actually want to talk about, which is I sent Brian a YouTube video, which went pretty viral. It's a pretty famous video of Ray Charles playing a song for you at Willie Nelson's birthday party, 70th birthday party. And I think he also shared it with you, Zamboni. I think you know. Mm-hmm. You were witness to
just
this.
Watching Willie.
I checked it out.
Yeah. For anybody who hasn't seen it, it's Leon Russell, Willie Nelson, and Ray Charles playing a song for you, and kind of Leon Russell comes in and he does the first verse, and Willie Nelson, he's standing there, his hair's down like a radiant, Texas angel, and he does the second verse. And then they just both shut the fuck up and let Ray Charles sing.
Yeah, he gets like 3 verses at the end.
Yeah, he just does the whole rest of the song.
There is a moment where it looks like the band expects Willie to jump back in. Like there's a moment where that happens, and you see him be like, no, no.
What happens as you watch is that Ray Charles has such a command of the song and such a command of the stage and such a command of his music that there is nothing that anybody can do except go along for the ride. And you actually watch as Willie Nelson is moved to like open weeping on the stage, watching Ray Charles perform this song. And Leon Russell, who wrote the song, is just sort of sitting there like a little shell-shocked. And just this profoundly moving performance. He's up there, he's singing, when my life is over, I will remember playing my song for you, right? And this was actually the year that, I believe it's the year that Ray Charles died. He died later that year. And you're witness to this performance, you're witness to this experience, you're witness to this moment of friendship between Ray Charles and Willie Nelson, right? These guys have been friends since 1962, okay? And for them to be playing together as old men and collaborating as old men, and to be so moved for Willie Nelson to be so moved by Ray Charles' art, and by what it means, it was like, this is the witchcraft. It's kind of the freak out that I had seeing this video again, and it got me. It was my canary in the coal mine, or my Trojan horse, or whatever metaphor you want to use for this feeling that I have, or that I want to talk about, that, what if magic is real, and I very much believe that it is, then it is alive and real in Black music. And that is what I want to talk about.
And, that struck me too as a good podcast thing for us to kind of dig into tonight too, and really pull apart a little bit too, is what is the magic that's present there that's clearly happening? Do you know what I mean? Like the fact that Willie Nelson is feeling a thing. The song is communicating a thing to everybody. I'm feeling a thing watching this happen through
Watching this low resolution YouTube video.
Yeah, some 1990s,
15 years removed or something like that.
Yeah, you know, it is a relic in time and place that I have no direct access to, except for this fucking spell that does affect me, that does move me, right? And you know, and so what exactly is in there that is the magic? What do we take from this, that other than just like these guys are amazing artists? There's more happening there, you know. So
yeah, a song for you as a magical text is kind of my opening volley.
Word. Yeah. Well, I mean, is there more to it than these some badass artists? You know, like I did a talk with Gordon one time that was like on art and magic, and like what's the difference between art and magic, and we decided that there wasn't really, you know. So like there's some real dope art going on, and you know, I think part of the magic that was taking place in that video is the idea that there's a moment in time that seems prescient. Right. Something about it, like, you know, it's the idea that like Ray and Willie both know that Ray's time is about to be up. And there's a lot of love being shown in that moment. And all of this whole audience happens to be present for that moment that's going on here. And so is it the idea of like, you know, like a prophetic vision of the future? Is that what we're feeling here? Or
I think you could. Sorry, you could also argue it's necromancy.
Tell me more.
I think that there's maybe not that particular performance, although I think that, you know, the same way that when you pray a rosary, you're praying every rosary that's ever been prayed. When you sing a song for you, you're singing every version of a song for you that's ever been sung. Right? That it's a unique. There are a couple really famous standout versions of a song for you over the decades that I think have interwoven and influenced each other. There's if you work backwards in time, right? There's Amy Winehouse's version, which is directly a tribute to Donny Hathaway's version. Donny Hathaway being Amy Winehouse's favorite artist of all time, right? She sings on Rehab. There's nothing you can teach me that I can't learn from Mr. Hathaway. Okay. Which prophetically tragic that song, and prophetically tragic that line. And, you know, she had this quote about Donny Hathaway where she was just like, you know, Marvin Gaye is good and all, but Donny Hathaway, he just couldn't help himself. That's how she would say it when she talked about Donny Hathaway.
So I want to interpose here, because I want to be clear. Until today, I did not know who Donny Hathaway was.
Word.
I didn't. I know. If you're just listening on audio, the look of pity that Zamboni just dropped on me.
You're gonna come to Zamboni's St. Louis musician house. Are you gonna?
What I am going to do though is be honest and be like, I had heard that line. I did not know who he was. I have actually heard his music before, which I didn't realize. You know, I had not put them together, right? Mm-hmm. So, who is Donny Hathaway for the uninitiated, unwashed masses amongst us?
Donny Hathaway is a soul legend of the highest caliber, but he is kind of a musician's musician. I think he has that reputation. Would you say that's fair, Zamboni?
Yeah, I feel like I am not surprised that Brian has not heard of Donny Hathaway before, because Donny Hathaway is like full of deep cuts. It's all deep cuts with Donny Hathaway. You know, like you mentioned Marvin Gaye, and like he does a better version of What's Going On, in my opinion. You know, like he like destroys that shit. He does a great version of Jealous Guy, a John Legend.
John Lennon should be embarrassed.
Right? Just like, yeah, and that's actually kind of, you know, like that speaks to the same thing that I watched happen on that Leon Russell, and Leon Russell is like hanging out, sings the first verse of a song for you.
He does awesome on the first verse. He does an admirable job, and then he gets
that's
out
very
of
like
it.
he did. You
Yes.
good job, sweetie. You did great.
Yeah.
And then Willie gets on the mic, and it's like nice, you know what I mean? Like
Nice,
cool,
it's good.
sure.
Sure, happy
And then Ray
birthday,
Charles
dude.
gets on the mic, and it's like, oh, this is a
Yeah.
different game. This is not the same at all. Like I thought y'all was singing the same song. This is a different stage. Y'all are,
Yeah.
it's a whole different league once Ray get on the mic, and
Yes.
it's interesting. You know, so you mentioned Jesse, you mentioned black music specifically toward
did.
the beginning here, and so what
Which
we're
is
noticing
a bit
here
of a
is at
Zen
least
koan, that phrase, black music.
yeah. Talk a little bit about that. What do you think?
I think what I mean when I say black music is I mean the styles of music that originated with black artists in America, by which I primarily mean like blues, jazz, gospel, soul, and hip hop. There's a lot of we could spend a lot of time talking about what is or isn't black music, but that's what I'm trying to get at when I say that phrase.
Yeah, and so why? Why do you care? Why does it like you know?
Here?
Well, yeah, I mean, like, you know, what drives you to make that distinction? You know what I mean? Like, this is a Leon Russell's tune, and
Right.
then he like gets shown up in a big way once Ray get on the mic. Is that what you're talking about here, or is there something wider going on when you refer to black music and its relationship to the reality of magic?
I think that those styles of music which have influenced both black and white musicians, right? But those stylings that were originated by black musicians, regardless of who they were later performed by and influenced by and influenced, certainly have their own unique cultural place and their own spirit that moves and animates people, right? And it would be disrespectful not to acknowledge that. On a personal on a personal level of why I care, I was raised on this music. I was raised by a musician. There's a there's a photo of my dad when I'm 2 years old, and he took me to Clarksdale, Mississippi, and he just sort of like held me up like in The Lion King, because he's like, my daughter needs to see. I need to expose her to the ambiance of the place where the blues came from. Like this is really my family. This is really my dad. This is really my family. And for where he got that passion from and where he got that joy and that love of music from, I don't actually know the story of that. I don't know if it's innate in him, but he's a musician. He's a guitar player. He's been a guitar player all my life, and he always like emphasized to me that music is the most important thing in the world. And that the blues, particularly for him, is the music that he loves and that he always played growing up and that he introduced me to. And he has very wide-ranging musical tastes, but that's my superhero origin story, right? And I'm no expert on these things. I'm a very amateur musician myself. I play pretty much for my own joy and the joy of my friends, but that this is what I spend like a lot of my time and my passion on, and that this from my earliest days was emphasized to me as like, if you're going to be on this planet, you need to know about this because something important is happening here. It exists here.
I wonder too, for me, this distinction. So like take blues for example for a second. Like the art forms that you mentioned, Jay, are from here. Do you know what I mean? They are a result of all kinds of cultural history stuff that goes on, good, bad, otherwise, but they are from the experience of America, from the land that's here, in a way that like even frankly, let me back up for a second. There's a reason I think that like Appalachian music, the sort of Celtic Appalachian, this kind of thing, kind of stays along the Appalachian Mountains, whether it's in Europe where that mountain range is over there, or it's over here. That music connects to those mountains in a way that's important. And I think there's something about the generation of soul, jazz, blues that comes from the African American experience here in the land, in this place, that is different from, say, some other music that is to some degree about imported traditions and things like this. I watched a really interesting documentary last year. I can't remember the name of it right now, about the origins of Native American contributions to rock music. And
I've seen that. It's a Netflix documentary.
Yeah, and talking about certain beats and stuff that get put into rock music that's very much a part of this tradition.
Redbone.
Redbone. They had a really great section on Native American and Black influences on how gospel is created in the South, like the sound of gospel in the South being a fusion of some of those native sounds as well, the indigenous tribe sounds, and their contention was that their contribution to that theme was bringing in the sounds of the birds and the water, that their musicians were trying to make the literal sounds of the land into their own thing, and that when the enslaved folks met with them and those cultures mixed together, they're both trying to blend that into a living thing. That's a different process than if you're bringing in opera.
Well, all of the American musical traditions are syncretic musical traditions, right?
Yep.
And they are only possible because of the syncretism that occurred here. Jazz could only have been created in New Orleans.
Yeah. You need there's Wynton Marsalis quote. You need the Spanish note. You need that sort of minor sound.
And the newly freed slaves and the classically trained Creole musicians and all the leftover trumpets from the Civil War marching bands and the ragtime piano and the blues chord progressions and the West African drums. And when you have all of those things plus a little something that's unique, then you can have jazz.
And a court square where people gather
Yes.
on a regular basis, right? Like the space itself is important as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about jazz a lot recently, and I'm thinking about I spend a fair amount of time like spelunking world music and African music most especially. And there are ways of thinking in African music it like always comes back to a clave. So there's like a certain rhythmic pattern that comes back all the time, And so a lot of times you'll think about the son clave, right? Like you're one, right? You get that joint a lot, and then there's like a gang of ways to like play with that. You can do a rumba clave, you can do a Brazilian clave, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And then there are ways of doing claves in East Africa that are a different way, that is the same concept of the clave, but it's going to sound a little different. It's not going to be that son clave. And then I think of jazz as pioneering the backbeat, and I think of the backbeat as the American clave. It's like the way that we sort of like come to understand music, and then that is so foundational to all of the music that comes downstream from jazz, and it all sort of like lives around this clave.
I love that.
I'm gonna do this thing again. What's a clave?
So clave is it translates to key, but it's just a way of organizing time. Mm-hmm. So so if you're going to be there's going to be a particular time signature for the music. There's going to be a certain number of beats, and you're going to repeat them in a certain kind of pattern. And then so a clave is a rhythmic pattern that's going to fit into that's going to give you some syncopation, that's going to move the groove forward in some kind of way. And so like you could think of like 2, 3, 4, right? You can just like live here, right? And they're all the same. 3, 4, 1, 2, right? You can do that, or you can do 1, 3, 1, right? and now there's some juice to it. Or you could do 1, 1, or you know, like there's 1,000 ways to do that. Or so this is we're still in time here for 1, 2, 3, 4. You could just do 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's the backbeat that we Americans tend to like. And this is like when I'm practicing the bass, this is where I want the metronome to be.
Yeah.
3, 4, 1, 2. So I don't even want, even though beat 1 is the main one, 1. You know, like, and I'm all here for like Parliament Funkadelic and everything is on the 1 and all this. You know, like the 1 is the like main beat. That's the one that matters. But I don't even want to hear that in the metronome because it'll groove harder if all we hear is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4, and then there's like a vacuum on beat 1 there that'll like suck the whole world up.
Yeah. So now I want to pull back to necromancy for a second, because what we're talking about, like, this is very classically, and we'll come back to this a little later too, but like this is very classically magic now.
Ways of organizing time. Yeah.
Ways of organizing time, ways of creating space to invoke, to bring in a spirit, right? That if you just hammer it out, you're not necessarily leaving room for anything to come in, right? You're not inviting anything in. So when we talk about this music as necromantic, or that experience as necromantic, what were you trying to get at, Jessie, with that?
I think I had lost my thread a little bit there, but the ways in which any given performance of a song is invoking other performances of the song and other musicians who have touched that song and performed that song, both present and future, right? Ancestors and descendants, right?
Right.
Amy Winehouse's version being a direct tribute to Donny Hathaway's version. And Donny Hathaway's version being supremely singular. But being especially famous in one live performance of it, right? The performance that was done at the Troubadour. I think I had a side tangent about Donny Hathaway and necromancy as well. That isn't necessarily about a song for you, but is necromantic.
Yeah, go for it.
I have a real you ever get just like 6 or 8 seconds of a song stuck in your head? Like
yeah.
And normally it's not good. Normally it's just like an earworm of 6 or 8 seconds gets stuck in your head on loop for just like hours and hours and hours. But I was like, what is the best 6 seconds of music? Right? An individual 6 seconds. It's an impossible question. But I feel like I have a really good contender.
Okay.
For the greatest 6 seconds of music ever. And it is off of Donny Hathaway and Roberta Flack's like posthumous duets album. Okay, so it is like and it's the I Who Have Nothing. So the first song on that album. Which is, by the way, but which is an opera cover. It's Uno dei Tanti. It's an Italian opera song. So Roberta Flack being a classically, like, having a classic European training coming out of the Black church. Donny Hathaway having a highly academic jazz training coming out of the Black church. And their collaborations being like a unique and singular musical partnership that they both knew was lightning in a bottle, right? And those records sold, like, their duet stuff sold better than any of their solo careers until Killing Me Softly came out. But I Who Have Nothing being this duet, and it's like a 5-minute recording, and 4 minutes of it is the duet, and then it comes to the climax of the duet. I who have nothing must watch you go and pass me by, wrapped in the arms of someone else when it is I who love you. It's very Italian opera, actually. And they kind of like come to the climax of the duet and it ends. And then the guitar riff fades in on the right side of the mix. There's a little guitar lick that's perfect.
Mm.
And then Roberta's voice comes in alone after that. And she does one of the all-time ooh-oohs in music. I think ever. She does 5 notes. She does ooh, ooh, ooh. And then she does a hum. She does a 4-note hum. And then she does the letter E, just the letter E. 2 notes. And it's like 6 seconds, 11 notes. And it's the most plaintive and beautiful, like there's like no words except those sounds. And for her to, in this recording and in this release, for it to be her voice alone after Donny has left.
Because he had passed at this point, right?
It's a lament, right?
Yeah.
It's a goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
It is analogous in some sense to what Ray Charles is doing later in saying goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, it's magical because it's beautiful art. And it's magical because it's Orphic.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is the singing of the vowels.
Yeah.
What does Orphic mean?
I think that, like, as in the Orphic hymns, right? As in the Greek
Orpheus.
Yeah. Orpheus, the poet. You explain Orphic.
Yeah. It's a sort of species of Greek religious movement that happened that produces the Orphic hymns, sees Orpheus as the sort of savior figure. It's all about music, and it's all about the preparing yourself for the life to come, to, and so the whole idea of going down to the underworld and returning, and
that is the musician's responsibility to do that.
And that the music, and that the world is a harmony, and the proper arrangement of music is essential for the functioning of the entire universe. And that if you wish to do miraculous things, to work wonders, to do healings, to anything else, you need to bring the music into it. And so, they focus a lot on the vowel sounds in particular. Obviously everybody focuses on the vowel sounds, which you can breathe, but like the intoning of the vowels in a certain way, certain harmonies and certain timings, they all had different effects. And like there's a whole tradition of this that like lots of people are trying to even translate. Like we've lost so much of it.
It's a mystery tradition. The Orphic mysteries, similar to the Eleusinian mysteries, right?
Yeah.
This sort of very ancient Greek mystical tradition. And to draw a direct line from Roberta Flack to the Orphic mysteries, like I will go to the pretension of doing that a little bit. I know it's pretentious, but she's covering an opera song. And opera was created in the 16th century in an attempt to recreate the Greek mysteries and Greek theater. It's not. And then the magician's way to think about that is that the Greek mystical tradition reemerged in the 16th century and made itself known again through the opera and inspired people again through the opera, and then was taken up by Roberta Flack and brought to people and moved people again. And that I can only ever speak from my own experience, but that I feel something when I hear that 6 seconds of her voice that I don't feel, that I can't touch at other times when I'm not listening to that 6 seconds of music. And if that's not real magic, then I'm not really sure what is.
The magic is in the feeling.
Yeah, and in the aliveness that connects you past and future. And in the praise, and it's also in the praise of what is separate and what is together. It's in the in the lament, right? To praise what you have lost, like to grieve what you have lost is to praise what you have most loved.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, maybe in defiance of certain Eastern spirituality traditions where nothing is separate because everything is one and also nothing exists. Zen koan. It's very Western, and it's very Western magical tradition, and it's very Gnostic to that unity is only possible because separateness exists. And it is actually the Orphic hymn to death that speaks to this, right? The Orphic hymn to death. There's many translations, but there's a translation that I like that effectively goes, "Death is sacred. Its absence gives us the sacred gift of time together and teaches us to love life, despite our begging and pleading and protestations otherwise." And to connect Roberta Flack and Donny Hathaway and Amy Winehouse and Ray Charles and Willie Nelson to that, like, that's what is interesting to me. Like, that's what's feeding my magical practice right now, I think.
So there's something here about precarity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Donny Hathaway famously fell out of a window. Did he jump? Was he pushed? Did he fall? Hard to know. Was he possessed? There's lots of fan theories. Say again, Jessie?
It's complex. It's not simple.
Yeah, it's hard to know. Hard to know. I wasn't there, but it is famously mysterious, and there is something precarious about Donny Hathaway's performance and legacy. Like there was an understanding at that time while he was a vibrant performer that there was something like on the edge about this dude. Like this guy is not like everybody else, and because it's so edgy, there's something that is like extra delicious about it. And he was close enough to the edge that he fell over. And there's something about that is really touching, that is maybe akin to the way that Ray Charles singing this song at the very end, and everybody knows that it's the very end. He knows it's the very end. Willie knows it's the very end. And we, after the fact, know that it's the very end. Sure. And something about that touches us in a way that is maybe more profound than things that are less precarious, less dangerous, less ready to hurt.
Yeah.
Or less carrying of pain, at least. You know what I mean? Like there's a term from both flamenco dancing and also Spanish poetry. They talk a lot about the duende and soul, but like Lorca's description is comes to you like an angel with razor wings, and it cuts, and yet you need to embrace it if you want to write, if you want to fight bulls or write poetry or dance flamenco. You were talking about Ray Charles in this particular moment, right? Like he's close to death literally at this moment. Like he's there. He does seem to know. There's something about what's going on with him. He seems to have some kind of touch on this.
It feels like he's saying goodbye.
Yeah.
When you watch him perform this.
Yeah.
It could be projection, but it really, the feeling is there.
But and you can notice Willie feeling that feeling on camera. Where he's like, and he's aware he's on camera, and he's like trying to, like,
that's a single manly tear.
Right.
Yeah.
But I wonder too. But Ray Charles lived in that space a lot.
Yeah, I was hoping you were going there.
Yeah, he has lived in that precarious place for a very long time, in and out of it, different kind of things going on. Different ways he got there or stayed there. Sometimes it's the drugs, sometimes it's not. Sometimes the drugs are keeping him from going to that place. Like it's not simple, right? But is, for lack of a better term, is he an incredible magician because he has been able to maintain a long and talented career that is also very technical. I'm not trying to take away from his technical expertise. I think the technical expertise is important
Yeah.
to maintaining the edge, but is he surfing that edge for so long that he knows how to bring it in a way that maybe Leon Russell maybe had a moment where he was there when he wrote the song, but he doesn't live there in the same way that Ray Charles has lived there. Is that something? I don't know. I'm curious.
You're I don't know. I think there's two branches of the trunk that you've brought up that I could take. And one is like the general relationship between great art and pain, right? And that like the great question of like, do you have to suffer to be a great artist?
Or to be a great fortune teller.
Yeah.
Great astrologer. Do you know the story about how Donny Hathaway's manager said that, or it wasn't his manager, it was his lawyer, said that there was nothing wrong with him. He was just an Aquarius. and didn't get a medical help for what he was going through.
Word.
Yeah.
That's
true.
Yikes.
Also,
Yeah. Rick Powell, when Rick Powell wanted to take him to the hospital, his lawyer wouldn't let him go because he said he's just an Aquarius. That's how he is.
Huh.
So
Anyways.
that
guy was an asshole.
So trunk one was pain.
Yeah,
what was trunk two?
I think I mean, yeah. There's how many soul musicians, like there's the human bias for like, oh man, all the great soul musicians died young, and there's a lot of great soul musicians who did die young, and there's other examples who like lived. You know, Roberta Flack's still alive. Aretha Franklin, Al Green's just bopping around with fucking Bonnie Raitt or whatever. They're doing great. But there's the like human cognitive bias, I think, to focus on pain, or to hold up what's painful. There's also the other end of the spectrum, the birth spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Donny Hathaway went on tour for the first time when he was 3 years old. Mm-hmm. Like they knew from the time that he came to Earth, right? There was also this sense that when he was really young, that he was close and he went on tour as a gospel musician at 3 years old, as a gospel singer, that he was close to God, that he was close to the Spirit because of how he could sing from the moment he arrived on this planet. So there's a birth death continuum. There's a what is the bias to focus on pain continuum. There is a, what is the relationship between pain and art and meaning and making meaning out of pain?
Zamboni, you popped up a little bit on the pain thing for a second there. What do you want to offer there?
Yeah, well, so one of the things that I have noticed since I started publishing music publicly is that so I have a bunch of positive tunes. Mm-hmm. I have tunes that are like, made to like make you feel good or to like bring out joy and gratitude and these kinds of things, And one of the things that I run into a lot when making that kind of music is that it really wants to be corny. I have to mm-hmm. work so hard to not let it be corny,
Yeah.
My joint, thank you. I like sometimes get a little embarrassed when it comes on. And there's been like something super ill before it, like some protege came on before it or something like that. It's like tough, rude boy music. And then my shit comes on. It's like, I want to thank you. It's like, and I stand by that shit. It's like, it's funky as hell and like it goes hard, but it's this close. It's this close to corny. It's almost there. And I don't know what that is, but I do know that in the same way that you can feel it when Donny Hathaway or Ray Charles or Roberta Flack or whoever is like killing you, that softly maybe,
Yeah.
that when you know, like you can feel that in that the same way that you can feel that, you can also feel positive music like heading toward corniness, and I don't know what that is, but it annoys the shit out of me.
So I was I agree with you because one of the things I wanted to get at here is I think intensity is actually some of what's happening here. Like to be in the bullfight is not necessarily always about the pain. I think it is also about the intensity. And I think soul music is maybe the place where you see this more. There is a lot of joy in soul music that is not present in other American.
There's a lot of joy in
music forms.
blues.
A lot of joy in blues too.
Blues
Yes.
is happy music.
You know, but there is this like, you got people bringing all of church, that whole moment of like the hallelujah is present in soul music in a way that like it isn't always present elsewhere. And it has an effect on people that's interesting too. I was watching the Stax documentary I was talking about, and they had the footage from that concert they did to celebrate the year after the Watts riots.
Yeah.
And they got, I think it's LA, it's one of the big LA stadiums. They got it filled out. Everybody's there. Step one, they say no cops at this festival. Because if you bring the LA police, that's where the problems start. We're going to self-police. We're going to hire a bunch of big fellows from around just to kind of like be bouncers. But like, there's no cops. They had a white film crew that wanted to film them. And they said no. And they got local black college kids who were taking film degrees to do the documentary. So that's the footage you have. And there's a moment, and I wish I could remember which singer it is. He's one of the older guys from the Stax stuff. He's singing, he kind of invites everybody to get up and dance, and everybody kind of charges the field, right? And they weren't supposed to be on the field, apparently. They just kind of signed a deal that they wouldn't mess the field up, you know? So people are out there dancing, and Al Bell comes over and he's like, hey, we got to get him off the field, or they're going to charge us a ridiculous amount of money for being out there, you know? And so the singer is like, hey, everybody, I love seeing dancing, got to get back up to those seats. And he just talks people gently back up to the stands. But as that's happening, there's one guy who refuses to leave. He's having his 10 minutes of fame. Do you know what I mean? He's dancing, he's making jokes, he's doing this. And the singer begins gently making fun of him, but like in a very family kind of way of like, all right, you know, we've seen this dance. We saw that move already. You know, time to get back up on, you're running out of moves. You got to get back up in the stands. The guy's not giving in. And all of a sudden a crew of like 100, like 10 to 12-year-old kids run down and they just surround him and kind of swirl around him and then to kind of like move him off the field. You know, you can't do that without this massive influence of joy and love and that togetherness happening there. You know what I mean? Like there's no violence, there's no ego happening. I'm sure there's plenty of shared pain in those songs. I'm sure there's plenty of shared communal things there, but there's also healing happening in that moment. And so I don't think I've ever seen something like that before. Or I can't think of it when I think about concerts and things. And so one of the things I wonder about is like, are we just programmed to find the pain easier? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it easier for us to access the moment with the pain? And it's harder as a musician or as a magician to bring in the intensity of the good, right? Like of the joyful. Is that, you know, is that a nature of our condition in some ways?
I wonder about that sometimes. I wonder if it's internal. Maybe it's me, right? Maybe I am projecting corniness onto joy and positivity, and I am also projecting deep feeling onto the intensity of pain, right? Maybe that's me. I also wonder sometimes if it might be, so one of the things that I notice is that low frequencies are more powerful than high frequencies are. And you can notice this just because if your neighbor is playing music, then you can hear the bass and the kick drum through the wall, and you can't hear the whatever like stuff is going on the top of that. And so literally low frequencies are more powerful than high frequencies are. And you know, it is easier to destroy things than it is to build things. You can just wreck shit in a day that it took years and years to build. And so I wonder if the Black Sea of chaos and destruction is not more powerful than the light. That's what I got. I don't know. I have had this thought for a number of years, and this is the first time I've ever said it out loud.
There's a Gnostic story from Valentinus, and I sound like Brian now. Like,
I was gonna say, you're stealing my shit. What is this? This is my job.
There's a Gnostic text from Valentinus where he tells it's a story about Sophia, wisdom, right? And she desires to create something as she herself has been created. So she makes a daughter. And the daughter is the formless chaos that exists outside of the divine realm. And her name is Akamoth, yearning.
Mm.
And Christos takes pity on Akamoth and gives her the form of a woman who throws herself continually against the barrier that separates her from heaven and chants the vowels Yao. Okay.
The yearning to return.
Yeah. It's very ancient.
Well, when you guys were talking about this just now too, and talking about the Black Sea and the destruction and everything else too, it got me thinking, since we're also talking about the Greeks, it got me thinking about catharsis. It got me thinking about being pulled to the breaking point, to experience the breaking. But that's not actually the catharsis. The catharsis is the release into healing that happens post that. So like the difference between a tragedy in the classic sense that provides catharsis and a horror movie is that, you know, you don't get that healing release from the horror. The horror remains the same, just the same note pounding you on it. You don't release even in a tragic thing. And I wonder if in some ways, maybe going back to Ray Charles and Donny Hathaway and these guys again, they're giving us to the catharsis. They're actually taking us through the break into the healing in a way that like just the healing or just the breaking isn't complete, you know.
Here's a question for you guys. Is being in love corny?
A little bit.
Is it corny?
There are moments. There are moments where it's cornball as fuck for sure.
Yeah.
Not only though, that's not all it is. Being in love is a lot of things.
Yeah.
But is it corny? Yeah, sure.
It's corny and it's painful and it's agonizing and unique and it's the same and it's totally new and it's never happened to anybody else before.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you know, it's just like Akamoth.
Yeah. It's the yearning. I like yearning is also good in that duende sense, by the way, because the bullfighters yearn to be killed by the bull, but they also yearn to live. They yearn, you know, it's the separation and connection. So it's not just the pain. Do you know what I mean? It's more than that. There's something else going on there.
And to be created by wisdom, right? That what wisdom creates is yearning.
Mm-hmm.
When given the opportunity, wisdom creates yearning.
Valentinus is like one of those geomancy figures. He has like a real pithy little, you know what I mean? Like it's real locked
There's
in.
another Zen koan.
Yeah, he just got a little tight. So, okay. One of the things we talk about with music a lot is the spirit, right? You know, somebody's bringing in the spirit, somebody's bringing in that's got soul. That's, you know what I mean? Like this is, whoa. Is it the yearning we're talking about when that happens? Is that what we're recognizing? Is that the note? Is it the touch of the eternal? Is it the sense of being backwards and forwards in time at the same time? Is it the sense of being connected and separated at the same time? Is that where we experience the soul point? What is, or maybe what's an example of a musician you've heard where you're like, yeah, that, I mean, because I think to some extent it's a little ineffable. It is hard. You're not going to, we make music about it because you're not going to talk about it to some level, but like, who does that for you, and who, and what are they doing to you? You know what I mean? Like what magic is being done is what I'm trying to get at.
Rather than, okay, Jesse, you look like you have something
No.
to say.
No,
No, make
want you to
Zamboni
go.
say what he was going to say. Make him say it.
Okay.
Go for it.
He's going to be like, Brian's wrong. Let's do something else.
Well, I'm not going to give you an example because you know the examples already. We've been talking about great singers this whole time.
Fair enough.
And
Fair enough.
you at home have great singers who you love also. There are great singers for sure. And musicians, whatever. What I am thinking about here is, so your question was like, what is the thing that we're feeling there when like great art and great music is taking place? And one of the things, so where I met you folks was in Power of Eight Intentions group. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we always say to new people who arrive, who it's their first intention, is that you are not a battery, but rather you are a conduit.
Yeah.
So you are facilitating the miracle that is taking place here. And it is, I think that's the main thing that is going on in great art, is like the conduit is happening, is taking place there. So like the singer is participating, and it like is embodied in that space, but it is the muse, it's the spirit, it's the soul that is coming through in that moment. And it's that feeling of not just connection, but being the connective point that I think is what the great artist reaches for.
Yeah. I think I'll get it. I think I'm gonna get at what Zamboni said, but via a different angle, which is that what it does for me is create or acknowledge the sense of unity and connection between me and the musician, which is only possible to experience because we are separate. So it is experiencing that duality of being the same and different, of being connected and separate, because to be connected to this person is only possible because we are separate beings. Right? If everything is one, there is no unity, right? In order to belong, we have to separate and to be separate beings. It's the mystery of two becoming one, becoming three. It's the same mystery as sex.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's what great music and great art creates in me. The feeling of. Very Greek.
Very African, very Black, very very American, very Appalachian. You know what I mean?
Very human.
Yeah.
Like to that love is only precious and is only possible because loneliness is so profound and so deep and so constant.
Yeah.
That's soul music to me. That's great art to me. For Donny Hathaway, the muse was like very literal, man. Like he heard voices. He heard there was a man who there was a man who followed him around who wore a black raincoat all the time that only he could see. And he called him Mr. Soul. What is that? I don't know.
It doesn't not sound like what we talk about when we say the devil. Do you know what I mean? I don't mean that flippantly.
No, it's not a flippant thing, and I don't mean to.
Yep. And it's also very real, and I can also see where that's something that's difficult, that is not doesn't lead for a healthy brain space to have that happening all the time.
No.
Or I don't want to judge unhealthy there. I want an easy thing to have that happening all the time.
You think about the pressure that's put on a kid to start performing, be a touring musician from the time you're 3.
Yeah.
There's a very difficult practical reality to that and a spiritual reality to that. And I'm not, you know, I'm not gonna dig too deeply in there. There's Donny Hathaway the man, and Donny Hathaway the myth, and Donny Hathaway the artist, and Donny Hathaway the moment in time, and those are all really complicated layers to this experience. But
that kind of brings me to something that I was thinking about earlier today. I was like in ceremony earlier today, and I was actually like engaged in music while I was doing it. I was like I had a bingy rhythm going the whole time.
cool.
And so I spent probably like a half hour just like doom doom ka ka doom doom ka 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 doom doom pa ka doom doom ka 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 ka, just like did that around and around for like a half hour. And so you get this like heartbeat situation going on, and
Yeah.
there's like
Polyphonic.
I tried singing a bunch, and it would fuck my rhythm up, so I mostly had to like let it be in my head. But
Drummers who can sing at the same time are god tier, dude.
yeah. Yeah, we're on the way. We're on the way, but not today. So, but so one of the things that I was thinking about Jesus, and Jesus is a funny figure to me because, well, for lots of reasons, but one of them is that he is continually being like, yo, I am not the only one who can do miracles. You can do miracles too, bro.
Yeah.
Come out, get on the water. I promise. Come out here. And then Peter gets out there and he's like, oh shit, I could do this too. And then he like gets all in his head and he falls in the water.
Yeah, he
and Jesus
loses
is
the
like, this
beat.
motherfucker, and like has to go and grab him. So, and so there's some, but so Jesus is annoyed, right? Because the spark of the divine exists in each of us, and each of us has the capacity to perform miracles, but we don't.
There's some type of fraction.
Some folks do it. Some folks sit in ceremony and do stuff, and try to perform miracles and channel the current such that it flows in a more harmonious and beautiful fashion, right? It's like some folks do that and some folks don't. Some folks, even if they know that it can be done, they still don't do it. They like fuck around instead, or do, do whatever they go to their 9 to 5 or whatever, you know what I mean? And so some folks are called, are required to be badder than everybody else is and be more of a conduit, be more in touch. Some people have to have Mr. Soul around, and that is potentially dangerous and destructive and harmful and terrible and also beautiful for the people who that is for. And then they sort of like do something that other people can't do, and then other people could do, but they like feel like they can't for whatever reason. And then because they feel like they can't, then they get to touch it when a Donny Hathaway is involved in that way. And so I was just thinking about that, and I was like, why would it be that we all don't do it? Why would it be that it is concentrated in this way?
So I tend to think of this capacity, whether we're talking, a particular art form or we're talking magic generally, whatever, as being very similar to sports stuff. In the sense that, like, I heard a joke the other day talking about, like, I haven't felt this sense of disappointment as much as a high school football coach watching a 6'5" kid in the theater class, You know what I mean? Like, there, it's not that you can't overcome or accentuate certain natural talents or anything else, but I think there's a little bit of this that is like, some people are inclined this way heavily, and some people are not as inclined, right? But then I do think there's a cultural imperative then that then breaks that down in people, like actively tries to keep people from realizing it. And the people who are just more inclined, there's to some degree the feeling like you can't stop. You're going to see Mr. Soul. You're going to have these encounters. This stuff is happening to you. And you can shut it down, but it takes a lot to shut it down in those cases. It's very hard. Whereas, let's say you have a little bit of a natural inclination on this area, and if somebody had blown on that spark since you were a kid, you would go completely into it. You would flower, right? You'd have it all. But instead, the system is very much organized to be like, don't do that. Don't get into that. Don't open up. Don't be divine in this way. Don't trust yourself. I think that's some of it. As to why is that in place becomes another question altogether. But I think that's some of what's happening to people.
Just the natural distribution of talents and proclivities.
In terms of like why there seem to be some people who can't help but do it, I think a lot more people can't help but do it if we had a different system set up. Do you know what I mean? I think we'd have a lot more people firing off, right? But I think that we actively work against that.
Yeah. I mean, everyone should learn to play the drums in kindergarten.
Right.
The drums are everyone, like drums are in particular are everyone's birthright.
And singing,
Song. Yeah. To learn the basics of technique. And technique and training and technique is really important. There is the stereotype of the soul musician as just a raw talent who emerges, a raw emotional talent, right? And that is true that raw emotional power is there, but the reason, the other part of the reason that soul music emerges as a genre is that it's sort of this first generation of Black musicians to get a college education in music, right? Not the first, but really that access was widening to such an extent, and to be given access to technique and theory and as ways to express that raw emotional power, and that certainly the basics of technique should be better taught and better made accessible to people. It's oracular. There's always going to be some people that the spirits want to talk to, that the spirits want to marry.
Yeah.
And that there has to be a balance in a society and in a community that when we talk about syncretism, when we talk about separation, when we talk about unity, when we talk about displacement, right? It doesn't just happen on a national or ethnic level. Like, it happens in a community. It happens in a family. And that communities and even at those most granular levels, that units and connections between human beings are self-regulating through art and magic and music. Yeah.
The technique piece interests me here a lot. So I was thinking about it. So like, if we focus on the people who have that oracular married by the spirit moment, like the people who can't help but do it, right? And we tell everybody else, oh, you're not like that. You can't, you can help but do it. So don't do it. This person over here, there's some kind of miraculous freak. Do you know what I mean? Like, it sort of weirdly twists people into that position and pushes everybody else away. But like societies where we have sort of limited this expression of an obvious talent to a couple areas, right? To music or sports or this kind of stuff. But like, we don't talk as much about the divinely inspired carpenter. However,
literally There's a
I know.
very famous carpenter
I know. I chose that
who
one
I
on purpose.
mentioned a minute ago.
His dad was a carpenter. Nothing says he actually picked up a hammer. Um,
I, I,
maybe he was just a soft boy who went to college. You know what I'm saying?
I, maybe it's harder. Maybe it's harder to see at the national level or at the historical level because of certain cognitive biases and certain ways in which things are preserved and not preserved. I think maybe it's easier to see at the community level. I happen to like, maybe this is a tangent, but I live in a really small community. I live in a really small town in New Hampshire now that is an intensely musical community. Like many, many, many musicians live here, and there's a living, intact musical tradition of public contra dancing. And so it's sort of not quite bluegrass music, but sort of traditional, like, you know, fiddle and fiddle and banjo and bass music that goes back to, early Quebecois settlers and um, really old, really old music. And that there have been monthly dances that happen here going back more than 100 years continuously. And that there's also a tradition in that musical community of sit-ins, right? The sit-in culture of contra dance is that any person who is learning an instrument can come and play at a dance. If you don't know how to play a single chord, you will sit and you will watch someone else. Because back in the day, nobody could afford music lessons. There wasn't, this is how you learned, right? To sit in at a dance and to watch someone who plays your instrument play and to try to copy to the best of, to kind of sit in the back where no one can hear you and to just copy them to the best of your ability. And that also there's the relationship between those musicians and the people who play music and the dancers who dance to the music that they play. And the ways in which this community has self-regulated via that relationship and via the connections that are built at that dance, and that it continues to do so. I was given the opportunity to speak at a town meeting recently because someone recognized me from a dance and said, "You're that woman who always looks so happy when you dance. What do you think?" I'm no Donny Hathaway. But in that moment, I was recognized for something that I had brought out in my participation and my relationship to this art that my community has and that my community makes together. And I was recognized for that in this teeny, teeny, tiny way where someone asked what I thought about an issue that affects the community because they recognized me for my dancing. Just to take that as a micro example of the ways in which that not everybody is or can be a Donny Hathaway, but that everybody has their thing that they could be recognized for if they participate in the song that everyone is creating together all the time.
That is very beautiful. It is also making me think about church.
Church was a place where a lot of people participated in the music together, and in some communities still do.
And where you would be taught to sing. Do you know what I
Yes.
mean? Like, I mean, in my case, my mom was the actual choir director, and so the singing lessons never stopped. You were flat. We're going to work on that again, you know. But part of her ministry was actually teaching people to sing. That there's, people come into the choir and they learn. And obviously there's some people who just have it. You know what I mean? They have, and like
From the time they're 3.
yeah, but they're taught to perform in certain ways. They're taught to give their gifts in certain ways, right? So they get a slightly different education, but they're still getting an education in the techniques and stuff. And if we're talking again about where does soul music come from, where, what are some of the places that these people learn? Donny, how what you're saying, coming up in the church, learning in the church. Like a lot of this was taught in the church in that community moments. But there's a lot of technique being taught. There's a lot, oh shit. I think it's Sam and Dave actually talk about like they just decided at concerts to do what they called full church. Like I'm gonna tell everybody to stand up. I'm gonna tell everybody to put your hands up. Everybody sing now. Hey, can I get an amen? Can I get this? You know what I mean? But doing the preacher shit to make the crowd respond a certain way. That's technique. My dad, who's a minister, actually really likes the story. It's a Tony Campolo story, but he had gone to a black church for Good Friday, and he was the only white guy to speak in the line of ministers. And he went right before they gave him a spot right before the oldest minister. And he had thought at the time it was a sign of respect. And afterwards he realized he was about to get taught. You know what I mean? He was about to go to school. And he gives what he thinks is a really good sermon, and people are really fired up. And the old guy is like, that's great. You've done a great job. Let me show you how to do this. And then blows the fucking doors off with a sermon called It's Friday, but Sunday's Coming. And he uses that refrain about, we're on the cross right now, but Sunday's coming. It's Friday, but Sunday's and builds the whole sermon out of it. But it's technique. It's not just, it's an art form he's doing there. So the contra dance got me thinking about that and how those opportunities are fewer. Even in the churches I grew up in, fewer and fewer people were being taught to sing in the choir. It became more performative. People started playing recorded music in the church too. So nobody was singing.
There's also something not uncomplicated about the spirit of the sacrifice or the spirit of the martyr. If we're going to talk about Christos.
Old JC.
Yeah.
Go ahead, hit it.
And the Redeemer, right? And the the separation and the unity and the redemption. It's probably like a little vague of an idea to come together. But I think we often think of the great artists who died young as martyrs for their art. Fairly or unfairly, whether it was their art that brought them to the point of their death or whether it's many complex factors that we won't understand because we weren't there.
So that
also, yeah, and also the ways in which the pressure of fame, particularly sacrifices people's humanity.
Yeah, or maybe it just makes you carry too much on your own. If you got something to add on the fame stuff or that piece, Zamboni, I'll step aside. But I did have a question for you. You made me think about you were in ceremony today.
Mm-hmm.
You practice music on a fairly regular basis, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
There's some regularity to your astrological practice. Mm-hmm. So, when we talk about why don't people do this, some of it is also why don't they do it 15 minutes a day? You know what I mean? So how much of this is it's all in showing up? That's not what I mean. But how much of this is
there's no reason anyone should clap on the 1 and the 3. It's not necessary.
Girl, tell that. Friends do not let friends clap on 1 and 3.
It's just if it's guys.
Y'all, listen, you should go to some more white churches. There's lots of 1 and 3 clapping. It's happening all the time, guys.
It sure is. But we don't go to these churches.
But I wanted to.
Let's redeem them.
Girl, that's all you.
Yeah.
I love what you're doing over here.
I'm working on it. I'm out here. The reason I'm on this
like,
podcast is because all my New Hampshire friends are sick of listening to me talk about soul music.
But I wanted to turn the question back to you on why aren't people doing this? If 15 minutes a day can get you there, why do you think people aren't doing it?
I don't know why people aren't doing it. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I'm one of the people who, like, I have to. I'm compelled, and I don't even like it a lot of the time, you know. And that's one of the things. That's actually one of the ways that I suss out who's like really into magic and who is like a kitchen witch or something like this. You know what I mean? Like some people want to be. They're like, what? Oh, like I want to look at some cards or get into breath work or something like this. You know what I mean? And some people are like, oh my God, why have you given this to me? I don't want it. Make it go away. You know? And those folks, those are the real magic ones. You know?
Yes.
Donny Hathaway won't stop bothering me. I can't stop thinking about him.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I do it because I have to.
I mean, that's actually
albums because of this.
It is actually a tricky thing in this room to discuss because the three of us are all that person.
Right.
We are all the person who my son asked me one time, what do people who don't have ambitions think about? Like what is regular life like? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what it feels like to feel this is not to say my practice is perfect or that I haven't had moments where I've not been living up to who I am. But I feel sick if I don't do these things. I feel unhealthy, you know. The compulsion is there, right? Like I'm not going to spend a Saturday doing nothing. It's driving me crazy.
I think for me, one of the it's almost a question of like, I don't understand how other people cannot be moved by the art that moves me. Like the idea that that there are people that I would show that Willie Nelson, Ray Charles video to, and they wouldn't give a fuck. They'd be like,
what's up with the old guys?
Yeah, or that I would play a Donny Hathaway song that means a lot to me and they would be like, sounds like, I don't know, generic old music. Like,
or worse, they'll just talk over it.
Say this, that there are people who feel that, like,
they'll just talk over it.
You know, to talk about my dad again. You know, he'll call me and he'll be in these passions. He'll be in these like almost frantic, where he's like, you have to listen to this song. I'm going to send you the song. You have to listen to it. You're the only one who will understand. And he's like, but you can't listen to it if you're not ready to receive it. You have to receive it in your mind and heart. Like, but you're the only one who'll understand. My dad will call me like this. And that this has been my entire life that, you know, I've been taught to like receive music with an open mind and open heart, because it's part of the bond that my dad and I share, and because it's part of what he has stressed to me is important. And what he's taught to me is like, I need you to listen to this in a way that you will understand it. And I don't know how to teach that to other people. That I'm not blood, you know, that aren't like this that I don't already have this bond with. What do you guys think? Like, what is it like to share? Like, when you share something that you're like, this is the coolest shit ever, and somebody just doesn't give a fuck. It's the worst feeling.
I have seen people be unexcited about Prince.
Oh!
Like, ask me why Prince is good.
Okay, wait, Zamboni, you got something to say?
Oh no, I know that I'm supposed to love Prince. He's like
Prince.
the patron saint of light-skinned Negroes who love purple, and so like I get it.
All right, so like I wear your shirt lots of places. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm out in public with the merch. I would kill to have a picture of Prince that said the patron saint of light-skinned Negroes who wear purple. I would kill to wear that. Oh my God, dude!
We live in 2025. You can make a T-shirt.
It's not difficult to do. It's way to your house tonight.
It has to be something you sell on your website.
It has to be Zamboni merch.
It's gotta say Zamboni attributed. It's gotta like have the quote line.
It's in quotation marks.
Word. Yeah, I mean it's true, and so I'm aware of this. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I am downstream from Prince. I'm supposed to love Prince, and I like kind of don't care.
I don't know. Yeah.
What?
Maybe this is also like maybe this also circles back to the corniness conversation though of like
The sound of that goddamn snare, the '80s snare,
Okay.
just like this huge ass.
okay.
That
Can't fuck.
is that is to be fair. That is a legitimate
I
thing to
I
overcome.
was thinking about this when we were talking about like man, it's so profound when like a musician is close to death and they like release their song that is like their final song. And then I was thinking about Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell's The Onion song.
What?
It is the way it's Tammy Terrell. It's their last duet before Tammy Terrell dies of brain cancer at 24. Like you feel like this should be like a really profound. Like you should be like this is so sad. One of the great all-time soul duos. She died so young, man. They're fucking singing about life is like an onion. You know, it's the spice of life that makes you cry.
You
And
are
I don't know how to feel.
you are listing. You are now voicing one of my absolute terrors. Is that my death poem will suck? Will just suck. It'll just be some kind of like Cats. Who knows? You know what I mean? Like some kind of bullshit.
All-time song. Fucking the Onion song.
Yeah. This is why I'm gonna write
me.
like 16 different death poems, and my editor is gonna need to look through them.
This is the only one he wrote.
Yes, burn the rest.
It's like being close to death doesn't inherently make you profound.
No.
Unfortunately, I wish that it did because then I would have something to like count on. It's life.
Yeah, man. No, you gotta practice, or else you're gonna end up writing some bullshit death poem. Like this.
Oh, I don't want to write a cringe death poem.
I'm legit
Could happen to any of us. Yeah. It's a non-zero chance. It's like and it's a terribly high chance. There's like a 45% chance of that, you know?
Yeah.
There's probably more bad ones.
Yeah. No, I write a lot more bad poems than I show people. Clearly.
Sure. Which is the game, you know?
Yes.
Like take 1,000 photographs, one of them will be good, publish that one.
Yeah.
You know?
Also, I actually have a little bit of disagreement with our good friend Gordon on this, on writing. Gordon talks about how, like, you can't just sit down and expect the muse to show up. You know what I mean? When the muse hits, you got to go and write and everything else. I was like, no, if you don't show up to your date all the time, she doesn't like you anymore after a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Like, you gotta
make a date and keep it.
Yeah, and not all those days are going to be good days. You know what I mean? But like, your chance of really not only your chance of hitting the soul moment, but your chance of learning to live there and be there more often comes with more often practice. So like, you got to fucking 9 to 5 this shit sometimes, and
Well, Venus and Saturn get along in an important way that is easy to forget about if you think about Venus as being so cozy and Saturn as being chilly and bitter. Yeah, and fuck that guy. Like Saturn is understood as difficult and challenging and all this kind of thing, but like Saturn is exalted in Libra, right? Like the idea of like making a contract and like we live up to our agreement. Like Saturn loves that shit, and Saturn performs really well in the Venus space that way.
Well, love is all about agreements and bitterness.
and devotion, and and if people think Venus is not difficult, they have not spent much time with Venus. Like, you know what I mean? There's a lot of requests. There's a lot of work. Also from the Venus side, to be beautiful, to embody Venus is a lot of effort. And a lot of like stuff put together. I like that Zamboni just
a lot of waxing.
A lot of waxing, yeah. I just like that Zamboni just calls out the beauty of my chart and my exalted Saturn and Libra and the mutual reception it shares. He didn't mention this part, but with Venus and Capricorn in the 5th, just pointing out that those of us who are blessed with these kind of things just make for the world's most natural lovers. It's good that you pointed that out on this podcast, my friend. I appreciate that.
I live to serve. I live to serve. And and if you at home would like to be served in this capacity, then you can go to ZamboniFunk.com where you can get a reading and I will tell you about why you are such a delicious lover. You already know you're such a delicious lover, but let me tell you why. Because I am imbued with this capacity. I love to read this chart. Please go to ZamboniFunk.com and get that reading.
I will also tell you, you should fucking get on the books. I went to go reserve a reading today, and I was like, oh, there are these slots, they're not everywhere. These slots are not constant. Lots of people are getting these readings. You want to get a reading, you want to get on those books in a timely fashion, you should get on it, is my message to people. Yeah. He's got other humans are taking him up on this offer. You should do it. Post haste. You should get on it. And if you would like to hear some bullshit about very pithy remarks about, this is how the afterlife works, or this kind of wittiness, or this kind of thing, I offer geomancy readings that will do the same thing at wilkinsbryan.com. You can come by and receive.
Okay, that was some bullshit, Brian. don't be talking about that, because let me tell you, Brian has done some geomancy readings for me that have been very effective, very good for me in strategizing. Like, what is my next move? This is my planned move, and tell me why it sucks. And where is the next, what's the thing that I should be doing instead? What should I be looking at? How am I going to find my fortune? All that kind of stuff. This is very useful for that you can get at wilkinsbryan.com. You can get that reading and not just listen to Brian talking some bullshit. If you tell him what to do, if you be like, yo, you like show up with a real question, like you can really make some good progress on whatever your project is.
Thank you. Jesse, are you existing anywhere in the internet these days? Are you sharing things with the people?
I have nothing. I have nothing to offer. If you're ever in Tamworth, New Hampshire, you can come to dinner. I'm an in-person only kind of girly, but I'll have anybody to dinner. That's what I'll.
Wait. I will tell you. You should come to dinner. Jess, just pick one of the recipes. You explain to the people what you did with duck recently.
Oh, I made Peking duck bao buns. That was pretty lit, and I've invented the perfect vegetarian po' boy. So, if you're ever passing through the White Mountains of New Hampshire.
And what night of the week did you just make Peking duck bao buns on?
Oh, it was Wednesday.
Yeah, so this is a Wednesday. This is not like fancy Sunday dinner. So,
Hey, the only thing that brings people together like music is food.
But that's a whole other podcast we should talk about another time.
We'll get to it. We have nothing but time. Yo, Jesse, thank you so much for being here. This has been.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for indulging my passions and enthusiasm and all the things I wanted to bring to you guys tonight. You guys are awesome.
Absolute delight.
Love it. Thank y'all so much.
Happy birthday to Brian.
And happy birthday to Brian. Oh my God. There he is. Look at him looking so chuffed.
Quick
Happy
chuffed.
birthday to Bob Marley.
Yes.
Beautiful people at home, thank you so much for being here with us. I look forward to seeing y'all next time. Peace and blessings, family.
Have a good night, everybody.